Scores of people disappear in a great city like San Francisco every year. Many walk out deliberately to get away from lives they find unbearable. But by the middle of 1985, Paul Cosner's disappearance was inexplicable. He had left his home the previous November to hand over his car to a man who had just bought it. Cosner was never seen again, but the next day there were strange noises on his answer phone. The police were called in. As Cosner's friends told them, there seemed no reason for him to want to walk out of his life.
He's a healthy individual. There's nothing physically wrong with him, nor is there anything mentally wrong with him. He is a happy person, not given to any kind of bouts of depression or despondency.
The more the police looked into Paul Cosner's background, the more it seemed certain he had been the victim of some crime. Soon his sister was openly expressing the fears that everyone had.
I'm afraid that the person wanted the car and maybe tried to rob Paul and stole the car, put his body somewhere. I don't know. I don't think a car would be worth it, but I don't know.
There the man showed his driver's license, which gave his name as Robin Scott Stapley. He repeated that he did not know the boy, having only just asked him to do some work for him. But when the police ran a computer check on the Honda's number, they discovered that it certainly did not belong to Mr. Stapley. Ominously, it was registered in the name of the missing Paul Cosner and was the car he had gone off to hand over. Mr. Stapley had some explaining to do, but as the police prepared to question him, he asked for a pencil and paper. After writing a few words, he took a capsule and then slumped forward unconscious. Thinking that he had had a heart attack, the police rushed him to a hospital. There he was found to be effectively brain dead and put on a life support system. Doctors diagnosed that the capsule had contained cyanide. Meanwhile, the police had checked the driving license and discovered that the man was not Robin Stapley. The real Robin Stapley lived in San Diego, and he had been missing since February. They also found a disturbing report that, shortly after he had disappeared, Stapley's camper van had been involved in a minor collision. A young Chinese man had been driving. The Honda was now thoroughly searched. There were 2 bullet holes in the front seat, 2 spent bullets, and some bloodstains on the fabric. The worst fears of Cosner's family and of the private detective they had hired to try to track him down seemed to have come true.
I would assume that this was probably a way of someone obtaining a car to use in their illegal activities. And I assume that because the time that has gone by, that Mr. Cosner is no longer alive.
Working on discarded receipts found in the car, the police discovered the name of Charles Gunnar. He lived near Wilseyville in Calaveras County, about 150 miles north of San Francisco. His house was outside the town, and little was known there about him. But the local sheriff, Claude Ballard, reported that he suspected that Gunnar and a Chinese youth named Charles Ng, with whom he lived, might have been involved in selling stolen property. They had appeared in local towns with furniture that belonged to a young couple named Lonnie Bond and Brenda O'Connor, who lived in a neighboring house. Gunnar had claimed that the couple had moved to Los Angeles and left the furniture with him to pay off a debt. Nothing had been heard of Bond or O'Connor or their baby since then. The police now checked Charles Gunnar's fingerprints. He turned out to have a criminal record for burglary and grand larceny in Mendocino County, where he had jumped bail. But his real name was not Charles Gunnar. It was Leonard Lake. Further investigation into Lake's background showed that his younger brother Donald had been reported missing in July 1983. Charles Gunnar was the name of Lake's best man. He had not been seen for several months. Sheriff Ballard now obtained a search warrant for the house in Blue Mountain Road where Lake and Ng had been living. On the morning of Tuesday, the 4th of June, officers from San Francisco joined the local police. They drove up to the small two-bedroom ranch which stood in 3 acres of land. At first, this seemed ordinary enough. But then the police got inside and reached the main bedroom. There were hooks in the ceilings and walls, and other things which, as the police later described, made them think that some sort of bondage had taken place.
Screw holes on each corner of the bed and the eye bolts in the dresser that we probably feel that it's possible he could have tied them down with those.
A box was found containing chains and shackles. A wardrobe was full of women's clothes. The police also found some expensive video equipment in one of the rooms. When the serial numbers were checked, this was found to belong to a San Franciscan couple named Harvey and Deborah Dubs. They had disappeared with their 16-month-old son Sean almost exactly a year before. They had left their San Francisco apartment without taking any belongings. But when their credit cards had started to be used, the police had made a televised appeal for help.
We would like to, the people that use the credit card, if they're not involved in the disappearance of the Dubs family, we again, would like to assure them that they're not going to be prosecuted for, buying a dinner with a stolen credit card. We're a lot more interested in finding out what happened to the Dubs family.
But there was no response. As a police task force was assembled, it was noticed that there were signs of digging outside, with a long trench apparently intended for a telephone line. There were traces of ash and what might have been bone. Also outside were an incinerator and a breeze block bunker, which had been built into the side of the hill. The bunker seemed to be equipped as a fallout shelter, with stores, guns, and military uniforms. At one end were shelves on which were manacles, handcuffs, and 3 knives. But the real horror lay in a windowless cell, concealed by a false wall.
Inside that room, there was a makeshift bed that had a small mattress on it and some blankets. There was toilet paper in there, personal effects for a female, such as makeup, and also a small plastic bucket used as a toilet, we believe.
What the officer did not reveal was that the room also had a one-way mirror and hooks positioned so that a body could be secured on the bed. On the wall of the small cell were 25 photographs of young girls, some of them never identified. Elsewhere in the house, the police found videos showing some of them being stripped, shackled, beaten, and tortured. One of these was recognized as Deborah Dubbs. Over the next few days, the remains of an increasing number of bodies were found. But the precise number could at first only be speculation.
I would make a fair guess. The people that are missing in my county, the people that Chief Murphy is missing from San Francisco, it would exceed 20 people. There's a lot of digging to be done.
Identification was almost impossible, since all the bodies had been cut up with a chainsaw and then burned in pieces in the incinerator. The police chiefs continued to be cautious as to numbers.
I'm saying at this point there are approximately 25 people who at one time or another had some dealings with the lake and Ing, especially the lake, that are at this particular time unaccounted for.
The grisly story soon became national news, and local church leaders tried to comfort those with missing girls.
Our hearts go out to all the families who are wondering, is my daughter among them? Is my daughter alive? Is my daughter dead?
However, it was established that one grave did contain the remains of a man, woman, and baby. Whether it was the Dubbs or the Bond O'Connors could never be ascertained. A friend of the Bond O'Connors talked about how Brenda had become increasingly concerned about her neighbors.
She was worried about going back up there, that their neighbor was strange and had sexual videotapes, and that he had on several occasions propositioned them to come over and watch these, and that she feared for her life.
On the 6th of June, as the investigation got underway, Lake's life support system had been switched off. By now, the police had built up a detailed background of the man, and his diary had been found, giving them an horrific picture of his last 2 years of killing. Lake had been born in San Francisco in 1946. He, his retarded brother, and 2 sisters had been rejected by both his parents, who were alcoholics at an early age. They were raised by their grandmother, who was a strict disciplinarian. Lake had become obsessed by sex. In return for protecting his sisters from the assaults of Donald, the retarded brother, he enjoyed their sexual favors and took nude photographs of them. Lake had escaped from this claustrophobic family background by joining the Marines. He served for 7 years, including 2 tours in Vietnam. But despite later boasting about his exploits, he never saw combat. He seemed adept at hiding his fantasies of sex and violence. After leaving the Marines, he lived for 5 years in San Diego and seemed a model citizen. He taught, worked as a volunteer firefighter, and devoted time to charities. He had married a girl named Clara Lynn Balash, nicknamed Cricket, in a bizarre ceremony which included a goat made up as a unicorn. The couple had moved back to Mendocino County, just over the Golden Gate Bridge from San Francisco. The marriage had broken up, but it was to Cricket that Lake wrote his last note, asking to be forgiven for what he was about to do. But the model citizen Lake became increasingly convinced that the world was doomed to perish in a nuclear holocaust. He began to mix with military enthusiasts and survivalists, practicing self-defense and living off the land. Lake and Gunnar acquired the ranch near Wilseyville, and it was here that Lake began to live permanently after he had been obliged to flee from Mendocino after being involved in a burglary. By the end of 1984, Charles Gunnar had disappeared, and Lake had taken over his identity. The diary made it clear that Lake's murderous career had begun well before he had moved to the ranch. He had been a member of many communes and survivalist camps, and at one of these he had murdered his brother Donald. Lake had begun to fantasize about the coming Holocaust, which would destroy most of humanity. devised a plan called Operation Miranda, in which he would stockpile food, clothing, and weapons at the house in the hills. His bizarre sexual fantasies were also fed by the red light district of San Francisco, and he envisaged kidnapping girls who would be kept as his sex slaves and used to breed a new world population. At some point while living in San Francisco, Lake met Charles Ng. He became a frequent visitor to the house. Lake's fantasies now began to be put into action. People would be lured to the house. Any men or babies would be killed immediately, while the women were kept for a time, stripped, shackled, and sexually abused until their captors grew tired of them. Despite these attempts to live out his fantasies, Lake, like many serial killers, had been aware of the ultimate hopelessness of his position. The thrill of capturing and killing his victims soon wore off. By the time he was captured by the police in San Francisco, Lake was deeply depressed and ready to commit suicide. His young friend was made of sterner stuff. Born on Christmas Eve 1961, the son of wealthy Hong Kong Chinese parents, Ng seems to have been a classic poor little rich boy who lacked for nothing and took to petty thieving and other juvenile delinquency to give his life some excitement. Involved in a hit-and-run accident in September 1979, he avoided prosecution by joining the U.S. Marines. But within 2 years, he had gone absent without leave, after an arms robbery from his barracks. A short while later, he was arrested by an FBI SWAT team at a derelict motel in Mendocino, where he had holed up with Leonard Lake after a robbery. Lake managed to go on the run. Ng spent almost 3 years in the federal prison at Leavenworth. Released in June 1984, he seems to have gone straight back to join Lake at the ranch near Wilseyville. After 2 weeks of investigation at the house, police had unearthed 9 bodies and some 40 pounds of human bones. From licenses and other papers found in the house, the police were sure that the remains of Paul Cosner and Robin Stapley were among them, together with the 2 missing families. There were also the photographs of a total of 25 girls, some of whom were never identified. But as the investigation at the house uncovered its gruesome haul of bodies and remains, it became clear that without other evidence, the full count would never be known. And the authorities were only too aware that the only person who might be able to provide that evidence had disappeared.
Unless Ng is found to corroborate any stories of how many, it's going to be very difficult to really say how many and who it was.
A wanted poster was issued initially detailing interstate flight following a burglary rather than murder, and Ng's description was given on television and in the press. Ng was traced to Chicago, but he fled before police reached his hotel. They suspected that he must be heading for Canada since he had family there, but for the next few weeks there were no sightings. Then, on Saturday, the 6th of July, 1985, a security guard in the Hudson's Bay Company department store in Calgary, Alberta, noticed a young Oriental man putting food under his jacket. As the guard went to arrest him, the young man pulled out a gun. One of the other shoppers saw the guard grapple with the man.
The security guard got shot, but he was over top of him. And then someone said, "Get the police."
The young man was overpowered, and police tried to identify him.
His property was searched. He was carrying a California driver's license in the name of Charles Ng. And at that point, we fingerprinted the man, and he was subsequently identified positively as being Charles Ng.
Immediately Ng's arrest had been announced, a team of San Francisco detectives and lawyers arrived in Calgary to make it clear that they would want him back to face trial for murder once the Canadians had finished with him. The Canadian authorities were initially cautious about the implications.
They're going to interview the suspect with a view to seeing whether in fact he's the guy that they are looking for, and whether the evidence that they have supports the charge to make an application for extradition a possibility.
On the 16th of December 1985, Charles Ng was sentenced to 4.5 years in Canada for attempted murder. A battle for his extradition now began, with Ng's lawyers arguing that Canada's laws forbade a prisoner to be sent back to face a possible death penalty. US lawyers argued that if this were upheld, then Canada would become a haven for every US killer who could get across its border. The case went to the Canadian Supreme Court, and on the 26th of September 1991, it ruled by 4 votes to 3 that Charles Ng should be returned to the United States to face trial for the appalling carnage which he seemed to be implicated in. Some 4 years later, he was still awaiting trial after several postponements. The police investigation of the house and bunker owned by Leonard Lake had been completed while Charles Ng was in prison in Canada. The horrific evidence found there, together with the videos and diaries which Leonard Lake had kept, established his guilt beyond any doubt. But the police were still unable to say exactly how many people had been slaughtered. Only once Charles Ng comes to trial, and only if he decides to be more cooperative than he has hitherto, will some semblance of the full truth ever emerge about the crimes which were committed in the hills outside San Francisco.
Good evening. It's a Sunday in October, 22nd, 23rd, something like that. Very close to my 38th birthday. And I'm starting this tape without script or without any real organization of what I want to say. But I do feel a need to explain. What I want is an off-the-shelf sex partner. I want to be able to use a woman whenever and however I want. And when I'm tired or bored or not interested, I simply want to put her away, lock her up in a little room, get her out of my sight, out of my life. Slave, there's no way around it. Primarily a sexual slave, but nonetheless a physical slave as well. I believe that I can, if I can construct a holding cell, a place where I can put such a woman, a facility that is so stark and so empty, so cold, so quiet, so totally removed from the world, that I can quickly condition a young woman to cooperate with me fully. If you go along with this, cooperate with this, we'll be as nice as we can to you within the limits of keeping you prisoner. If you don't go along with this, we'll probably take you into the bed, tie you down, rape you, shoot you, and bury you. So, my lady, time's up. Make your choice.
But I want to be available.
That's all we wanted to hear. While you're here, we'll keep you busy. You'll wash for us, you'll clean for us, cook for us, you'll cook for us. That's your choice in a nutshell. It's not much of a choice, unless you've got a death wish.
Yeah, I don't check.
ever arises again, if there's any circumstance whatsoever that leads me to think that you're even attempting to make noise, it's immaterial as to whether I hear you or anyone else hears you. You will be whipped very severely. And tell me you understand.
I understand.
I'm having a little war within myself between what I want to do and what we might call the decent thing to do. And for the moment, the decent thing to do is winning. So, rest. Okay, I just want you to know that I'm giving this stuff to you under protest. Not that you'd care, mind you.
You let us know?
Probably not.
Why are you doing this?
Because we hate you.
Yeah.
Your baby is going to be taken away. Excuse me.
I'm going to be taken away.
There's a family down in Fresno that doesn't have a baby.
You're not taking my baby.
And the baby's dead, right?
I mean, they got one now. That's my baby.
Brenda, you have a... Her baby is sound asleep, like a rock. We don't like you. Would I like me to put it in writing?
It's done. Just stick to whatever we tell you.
Your way.
Don't cut this bra.
Nothing is yours now. You get till 3 hours.
Like it's so hard. You're like sick.
Supper.
I'm gonna pass out if there's some light or something.
Well, you can pass out, but we won't wake you up.
Brenda, I have a lot of animosity against you, and I would just as soon start you out with a nice firm whipping right now to make you believe how serious we are.
So, I thought I'd unbutton my vest again for you. Ah. And since you're into my sweet little hat, nice and soft and padded so we don't leave marks, but nice and firm too. That's for next. Let's see. We talked about underage performers, and but I've seen some awfully cute-looking little 14, 16-year-olds that I envy, and I wouldn't mind watching them do something interesting.
Hello, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thank you for watching Inside Edition today. We are here in the hills overlooking San Francisco. That's the Golden Gate Bridge behind me. A spectacular view. And a little later on, we will talk with Fergie, the Duchess of York, and find out if she has really settled down. But first up today, a story that has all of California watching. The story of Charles Ng, who is accused of being the most sadistic serial killer ever. A former Marine, Ng allegedly tortured men, women, and even little children for fun. He is now awaiting trial on multiple murder charges. Inside Edition spoke exclusively to a man prosecutors say Ng confided in. We must warn you, some of this story is very graphic. Here's Rick Kirkham's report.
It could have been a scene right out of a Nazi death camp. But police say this chamber of horrors was found right in the middle of California, just outside the town of Wilseyville. A place where Charles Ng, a former U.S. Marine, and a self-proclaimed survivalist named Leonard Lake allegedly committed some of the most heinous acts of torture and murder ever to have occurred in the United States. The number of victims? Police say perhaps 40 or more.
He can kill and not even think about it. He could kill you right now and go eat supper and not even think.
Charles Ng's first crossing with the law came in 1982. Having been dishonorably discharged from the Marine Corps, Ng and his survivalist friend, also an ex-Marine, whom Ng had reportedly met through a Soldier of Fortune magazine ad, were arrested by FBI SWAT officers. It was discovered the pair had smuggled a large cache of hand grenades, rifles, and ammunition from Ng's former military base in Hawaii to the mainland. Leonard Lake jumped bail and went underground. Charles Ng was court-martialed and sent to the U.S. military prison near the famous Fort Leavenworth, Kansas penitentiary. There he met up with this man, who listened as Ng planned his revenge for his having been incarcerated.
He seemed like he hated everyone and everything. He blamed everyone in the world but himself.
Ng was known to have drawn vivid pictures of brutal murder scenes in prison. Fellow inmates feared him because of his expertise in martial arts. They referred to him as the prison's Bruce Lee. But it wasn't until he was released in 1984 that the world would begin to feel the true brutality of Charles Ng. It began when Lake and Ng moved into Central California. According to police, Charles Ng and Leonard Lake had constructed a concrete survivalist-type bunker a few hundred yards up the road behind me here. But authorities say honing their survivalist skills was not what this pair had in mind. Rather, Ng and Lake were dedicated to a project they had called Operation Miranda, a project that was solely dedicated to the rape, torture, and murder of anyone the two could lure up here. San Francisco car salesman Paul Cosner was one of the first victims. Cosner had run an ad to sell a car, and Leonard Lake had responded. Cosner then vanished. For 7 months, his sister Sharon lived a nightmare of not knowing what had happened to her brother. Then she got a call from police that made the horror of not knowing seem trivial.
They told me that there were burnt bones. They told me that there were bones just thrown out in the front yard. They told me they thought they were human. They told me they'd found all kinds of videotapes, and it looks like they were some of them of torture.
The discovery of this remote torture chamber came after police had confronted Ng and Lake outside this hardware store. On June 6, 1985, police were called to this South San Francisco supply house. It seems 2 security guards working here had spotted 2 men attempting to shoplift a 70-pound vise, a tool in this case used to firmly grip objects of at least the size of a bowling ball. Those 2 men were Charles Ng and Leonard Lake. Police had no idea of just who it was they had arrested until one of them looked into the back of the pair's car. A gun lying in the back seat led officers to check the car's registration. It was the Honda belonging to Paul Cosner. There were bullet holes and blood in the car as well. Police immediately arrested Leonard Lake, but Charles Ng escaped. Then, during his interrogation, Leonard Lake swallowed a cyanide capsule and collapsed dead in front of investigators, just as police were moving in on the pair's bunker.
I think it was probably a getaway point, a torture chamber, as so stated in the press, maybe a survivalist retreat. Who knows what fantasies may have been in his mind when he built that bunker. We may never know.
One person who does know is this man, a former friend and cellmate of Charles Ng. He is considered the key witness against Ng because it was this man that Ng called on the phone during his torturous activities on abducted women, vividly describing what Ng and Lake were doing to their victims.
He used instruments of torture, vice grips on fingers, on knuckles, on sensitive body parts. He enjoyed it. It gave him pleasure. He loved to do that.
Worse yet, Charles Ng and Leonard Lake had bragged about their torture on babies while their mothers watched. One case involving the reported placement of an infant into a microwave oven.
He bragged to me once that he had roasted a sucker.
Roasted a sucker?
A sucker is a baby.
If Charles Ng was calling you and telling you all these terrible details about tortures and murders, why didn't you go to the authorities?
It seemed so incredible, I didn't believe him at first.
Police spent more than 6 months unearthing dozens of pounds of human remains, some found in shallow trenches alongside the bunker. Only a portion of the remains could be identified. Police combed through the bunker itself, where victims were tied to chairs, left in rooms with only toilet paper and a small air pipe leading to the surface above. Meanwhile, one of the most intensive manhunts in history was being undertaken to find Charles Ng, a man authorities believed was the equivalent of the devil himself. 1 month after escaping arrest at this hardware store, Ng was captured outside this Canadian store, again after allegedly shoplifting, and this time shooting a person inside the store. It would be 5 years before Canadian authorities would allow his extradition, Ng finally becoming one of the only people ever extradited from Canada, with authorities there knowing he faced an almost certain death penalty. Ng bragged that he would again get revenge. He created a hit list of 77 names he said his followers would execute: prosecutors, police, and friends like this one. Do you fear Charles Ng even though he's in prison?
Yes, of course. He has absolutely no conscience. He may have a cult following, who knows?
Because of the fear surrounding Ng, his alleged torturous past, and possible followers, his first appearance in a U.S. court in September of this year was one of the most heavily guarded ever, as a judge warned Ng of his possible fate for the 11 murders Ng is charged with so far.
Mr. Ng, if you are convicted of 2 or more of 187, that is the homicide counts, the maximum possible penalty, Mr. Ng, is death. Do you understand the maximum possible penalty, Mr. Ng?
I've thought a lot of time about why they did this. And the only thing I've come up with is that they thought it was fun. No excuses. They just thought it was fun.
Charles Ng still awaits his trial almost 7 years after the crimes he's alleged to have committed occurred. But everyone involved with this case agrees that the impact of those crimes will most certainly last a lifetime.
Charles Ng is probably the most sadistic serial killer alive. He murdered, he tortured, he raped for the pure pleasure of it.
Well, authorities are taking no chances with Charles Ng. He's at Folsom Prison under the most tightly secured custody in California history. He's not even allowed to receive mail. We'll keep you posted on the upcoming trial.